It wasn't until 4 years ago that Teresa Tebby, a victim of child abuse, started dealing with her demon.
Especially when my young children hit a certain age and I became more within myself and had a lot more memories, I was just falling to pieces.
Teresa found ASCA, Advocates for Survivors of Child Abuse, and says her long road to recovery began.
Once a child is abused, a lot of skills are lost. The trauma just takes so much away, and we're here to try and help people regain that.
This week, ASCA's regional and national headquarters will officially open their new drop-in premises located in Station Street, Waratah.
We deal with people from 18 years over, and what we do is look at reparenting in a way.
85% of child abuse occurs within the immediate family. Devastating experiences that can leave a child confused and isolated with lifelong effects.
Everyone kept saying to me, that happened years ago, just get over it, you're grown up now. And it isn't like that at all. It is the child screaming out inside saying, help me.
Make contact, come along, don't miss out. It's never, ever too late to have a wonderful childhood.
It's a big responsibility having a little human life, and maybe all they need is a little bit of guidance. Maybe they just need somebody else to listen to, and that's what we're there for.
It was possibly the last thing the netball fraternity expected to see on the West Lakes courts this morning. Officers from the Hazardous Materials Response Unit dressed in protective clothing to decontaminate the playing surface. Shortly before 8 o'clock, carnival organisers found a white substance spread across the courts.
Some volunteers commenced to sweep up that white powder and were somewhat affected in their breathing from the powder.
A fire extinguisher was found discarded in a nearby waterway. Police say it was stolen during an overnight break-in at the neighbouring Wanji Bowling Club. While authorities believe the white substance was no more than vandalism, every precaution was taken with nearly 500 children attending the carnival. A sample of the powder was sent away for further tests. Todd Nardi, NBN News. Cappuccino, espresso, macchiato. That was simply where it started. French vanilla, Irish cream and Brazilian coffee. The only thing more impressive than the number of blends was the number of drinkers. The second annual Derby Street Coffee Festival confirming Newcastle's claim as a mecca for the latte set.
People are starting to appreciate the finer things.
Those chasing tips on making a fabulous flat white only needed to speak to world barista champion Byron Bay's Paul Bassett.
At the end of the day, the coffee should be sweet enough not to put sugar in it.
Some festival goers had plenty of kick without a caffeine hit. Todd Nardi, NBN News.
It's our brain cells that somehow manage to filter the millions of bits of information they are bombarded with every day and respond accordingly. In trying to find out just how this happens, researchers have turned to steroids, the brain's protectors, able to change how messages are received and processed.
This particular steroid binds to this receptor and makes it work a bit better, a bit stronger, and it's under control so it can be turned on and off.
And to help measure this, some chemists and a very sensitive piece of technology known as a mass spectrometer.
And so we take little bits of brain out from animal experiments, sometimes from human samples, and run them through an analysis to look at the steroid composition in the brain.
Based at the University of Newcastle and supported by the Hunter Medical Research Institute, Professor Calford's work is determining the brain's ability to strengthen areas when another part has been damaged. And with the help of special drugs yet to be developed, the future for people suffering depression and stroke, where certain parts of the brain have been switched off, looks brighter.
It's inhibited, and release from that inhibition is one of the hopes from my lab and 20 or 30 other labs around the world that are working on these neurosteroids that can turn on and off this inhibition.
To secure a place in an aged care hostel in the Hunter, you'll be waiting almost a year. That's about 4 months longer than the state average.
It's a critical situation. Any responsible aged care provider grieves a lot for the people that are trying to get into our facilities.
Results from a recent survey are alarming. For a place in a Hunter nursing home, the elderly wait 44 weeks, while for hostels it reaches 50, substantially more than the rest of the state.
It is a serious worry because our population is ageing and already we're behind. So when the government came to power, they had an 800 surplus beds. They're now in crisis point with over 12,000 places that aren't provided.
And with the situation set to worsen as the baby boomers begin to need aged care, it seems the only answer is to build more hostels and nursing homes. A Sydney developer has lodged a DA with council for a 240-unit hostel on Christo Road at Waratah. But it will be a low-care facility, angering the aged care industry, which says it's hostels with registered nurse supervision that are desperately needed in the Hunter. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Two weeks ago, the Knights were optimistic of keeping the game's number one player at Newcastle, and on the surface, nothing much has changed, even with the wave of speculation of a switch to Union.
By nature of who Andrew is, it's always going to attract media interest, but we're still confident that he'll be at our football club for the next 2 years, and that's what we're working towards.
But there has been no movement on an offer that's been tabled now for some time.
Getting to a stage where we need to resolve some things so that we can make sure that the team is looked after.
Just as the club tries to keep some, so too the job of letting others go. And Newcastle has told Robbie O'Davis he can look elsewhere to complete his playing career. While the club hasn't closed the door on the 213 first-grade game veteran, the 31-year-old knows the writing's on the wall.
It's virtually like look around, make up my decision now, whether I'll call it a day or whether I have to move on.
Realistically, that only leaves playing overseas, as he couldn't play against Newcastle, a club he hoped to play a record amount of games for.
To say that the youth of the club has to come first, and they want to get all them blokes on paper at the moment.
It's many of these guys the club would love to see on their team sheet for Sunday. A number of injured are hoped to be fit to play Manly, with only Adam Woolnough a definite as he returns from suspension. The rest of the side won't train again until Thursday. Highfields Azzurri should be celebrating a 3-1 win that got their season somewhat back on track. Instead today they were dodging more unsavoury headlines. A week after club president Shane Toll was slapped with a 16-week suspended sentence by the Soccer Federation, he's been accused of assaulting a South Cardiff official prior to yesterday's match at Whitebridge. Police were called but no charges were laid, although he'll almost certainly face a disciplinary committee hearing held by the Northern New South Wales Soccer Federation, most likely next week. In Premier League hockey, draws in 2 games, while Norths beat University and Souths snuck home against West 3-2. After grabbing an early goal, Souths doubled their lead thanks to a familiar sight in John Finance. There were chances for both sides after that, but Souths were able to hold on and score a 1-goal victory. And after making her first cut in an LPGA event, Cherie Burns has finished equal 74th after a disappointing final round in the $1.3 million 54-hole Classic in New Jersey. A 3-over-par final round cost her a chance of a higher finish, but the almost $2,500 US she earned from the tournament will help as she continues to forge a permanent career on the US Tour.
Swansea has $1 million views, $1 million real estate, and now an instant millionaire. Have you got your $1 million yet?
No, I never won $1 million. Oh, wouldn't that be lovely? Wouldn't that be lovely?
Well, she's a bit of a kidder, and when she came in yesterday and said I won it, I said, oh yeah, and I didn't take much notice, and then I looked at her face and she had tears in her eyes, and I said, did you? And she said, yes. So it was lovely. I couldn't believe it.
The winner wants to remain anonymous, but we do know the lady in her 60s plays the same numbers every week.
I believe she's a pensioner, so a very deserving customer.
Are you Swansea's new millionaire?
No, I wish I was.
You're carrying an awfully fat bag there. It's not full of cash.
No, groceries.
The win has sparked a rush on tickets at the Swansea News Agency. It seems everyone's keen to win a packet.
Here we go, the next one.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Hunter Valley wine country is well and truly plotted on the world tourist map, but a multinational hotel chain has claimed it can further extend the Hunter's international reputation and attract new business, with Pecolbin's first international hotel, the Crown Plaza, Hunter Valley.
Listen, this is one of the most famous areas in the world, and the quality of the wines, the reputation, it just made all the sense in the world, and there was a real need for an internationally branded facility.
Construction is well underway, with the 150-room hotel and 175 villas being integrated into the existing 18-hole Hunter Valley Golf Club. And as the Hunter is now one of the best wine tourism destinations in Australia, Cessnock Mayor John Clarence believes the region is crying out for more accommodation.
And as we increase the numbers of visitations, we're already up around 3 million, there'll be a demand for a better quality, higher quality resort such as Crown Plaza.
Cessnock City Council unanimously approved the development as it will provide a considerable injection into the economy. It will also help to lower Cessnock's unemployment rate, with 150 construction jobs plus 100 positions once the hotel is complete. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. State CHS title holders or not, Newcastle High wasn't getting too cocky against Westfield Sports High, a school that specialises in nurturing talented youngsters. Even so, the Novocastrians' raw ability shone through, finding form after the first quarter, and from then on the baskets just kept on coming. Joshua Cohen was the most prolific, scoring 30 points and the game's most valuable player award. Adam Stanger was also on fire, hitting 20. The final scoreline reflecting just how dominant the defending premiers were, finishing 40 points clear of Westfield Sports High. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
It was a case of corporate bad news today for the Rosemount Estate winery near Denman. Owner Southcorp has decided to overhaul production and distribution.
The impact of that is that packaging and distribution functions will all be relocated from this site to other parts of the business, and as a result of that there are approximately 100 positions that will be made redundant at this location.
Southcorp will shed 190 jobs across its Australian wine business, with displaced Upper Hunter employees able to apply for one of 110 jobs that are being relocated with their bottling lines to Victoria and South Australia.
And we'll be giving priority to the affected people to apply for those positions and give them priority over external applicants, and also support them financially to relocate if necessary.
While bottling goes, vineyard and crushing activities to produce an estimated 48 million bottles of wine each year will continue as normal at Denman. Meanwhile, competitor Foster's is putting its 100-hectare premium vineyard south of Muswellbrook on the market within weeks. The impending sale follows an operational review of the group's global wine operations. Gary Blair, NBN News. A family of 7 was forced to flee the burning England Street home just before 5:30 this morning, with 2 members taken to hospital after being overcome by smoke. While firefighters were quickly on the scene, most of the dwelling was extensively damaged by the flames. Police say an electric heater is the focus of their inquiries to establish how the fire started.
The innovative lung function test developed by Australian researchers could revolutionise the way doctors manage asthma. Unlike other chronic diseases such as diabetes and hypertension, there's been no simple measure to diagnose the ailment, which affects 1 in 10 people. Newcastle's Meryl Braidwood is among the first to complete a new test that involves inhaling a powdery substance, giving doctors an indication of how severe the asthma is and how to best treat it.
So this test uses that same principle of drying the airway, but not with exercise, but with a naturally occurring sugar called aridol or mannitol.
A call has gone out for volunteers over the age of 8 to take part in the study, which is already showing merit.
Oh, the aridol I think was the better. It was less intrusive. I didn't feel quite so chesty and didn't splutter as much.
The good thing about that is that it will make it accessible to people outside of the big hospital setting, so it'll be accessible in the community and in rural and regional Australia.
Anyone wishing to volunteer for the study should call this toll-free number. Colleen West, NBN News.
It's the latest read for backpackers to try and get them to Newey. While council and the local backpacker industry have opted for a wicked funky layout, a traditional Newcastle selling point on the front is already proving to be the hook.
Because the cover has the beach, and that's a lot of people come here for the beaches. So
definitely the beaches. That's one of the reasons I'm here.
You can't beat the beaches here, so.
Newcastle's 4 backpacker accommodation houses hosted 22,000 visitors last year who spent $5 million. Key information in the brochure will prove vital in making the city a preferred destination.
I thought it was pretty good. It shows you everything that you can do. I liked how the prices were in it.
Being laid out so nice and organised with all the prices and stuff.
And another batch of winter tourists will also help our prospects.
I think my favourite so far actually was the whale watching, and just the fact that you can even walk out to the beach to see them.
The average backpacker stay in Newcastle is between 3 and 5 days, and the industry would like to increase the length of stay and how much they spend. Backpackers have this advice.
Just keep it cheap because we don't got a lot of money.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
A year ago, it was extremely difficult to access after-hours healthcare in the Hunter.
Well, we were moving into a crisis situation because of the doctor shortage that we have in our region, the pressure on emergency departments. The community was facing a crisis in access to after-hours health services.
That was until the GP after-hours service was set up, with 5 clinics across the region, the first of its kind in Australia. In the last year, 40,000 patients were treated by the 230 doctors involved in the service, alleviating pressure on emergency departments.
We've reduced emergency loads for general practice type patients by 20 to 60%, depends on which one of the hospitals we're looking at.
But so far, Health Minister Tony Abbott hasn't committed funding beyond next year, and the after-hours service will face closure in March without it.
They have to negotiate a new contract or the service will close early next year. It's as simple as that.
Federal member Bob Baldwin is in no doubt the service will be funded. He says a decision won't be made, though, until an evaluation is finished in 3 months.
But given the benefit it provides to the community, I'm sure this program will be funded.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. It's these calls which some people dread. Telemarketers selling everything from holidays, roof restoration to wine.
They're a pain in the arse.
You don't really want to speak to these sort of people.
Well, it's because it's invading your privacy.
The Labor government has proposed a solution called a Do Not Call list. If you're registered on it, telemarketers won't be allowed to ring you, except for those working for political parties, charities and research marketing companies. But telemarketers say a Do Not Call list will kill off much of their business and put thousands of jobs at risk.
We feel in its current form an introduction of a do not call list will have a significant impact on our business, limiting the opportunity to get lists for our telemarketers to call up and obviously limiting business opportunities.
And with 2,500 people employed in telemarketing in the Hunter alone, industry sources say the impact nationally will be enormous. And while they do admit the register will increase productivity and staff morale by targeting just those who are open to telemarketing, they say the current proposal is very restrictive.
They need to either select to receive all telemarketing calls or not to receive any at all. I feel that's restrictive because some people may not wish to receive information or a call about one product, but may be more than happy to receive a call about another.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
There were a few interested observers at the final training session, but they didn't see Tamana Tahu, who was at the specialist today and will need a miracle to play tomorrow.
He's got an opportunity to take a week off and get himself right for some important games at the back end of the season, so we're not taking any risks.
That sees a recall for the club's leading try scorer this year, George Carmont. Jamie Fitzgerald covers at hooker for the absent state rake Danny Badiris, in a game that means a lot to the Knights.
It's a really sharp session. I was really happy with their enthusiasm. We spoke about the importance of the game, the importance of this game setting up the rest of the season.
Last night, Raymond Terrace took on Macquarie and Newcastle Rugby League at Toronto, but didn't take long to make themselves at home. Macquarie hit back soon after, but the Scorpions stung just once in the first half. Instead, it was the visitors doing all the scoring, and didn't they spread it about? Just 3 of the starting side didn't score a 4-pointer. Jamie Batty had a double before half-time, while some hadn't ever seen so much space in what became an 84-6 hammering.
This is the most enthusiastic production line of future aspirants to the Olympics in the world.
3-year-old twins Bob and Alex Butler may not be old enough to fully understand what's happened to their High Street Wall's End home, but this reunion was a moment their father Mick will hold dear for a long time. Mick was outside talking to a neighbour early last night when they noticed a rear family room where the twins were watching television was ablaze. 15-year-old stepson Brendan and his best mate Winston were in a front bedroom playing video games.
I ran in through the flames and had a look and ran straight towards the front of the house, and luckily enough they were all in the bedroom and got them out as quick as possible.
This scorch mark on Mick's jacket testimony to the intense heat that gutted much of the house. To some, Mick's actions are heroism. To others, it's just what you do in the heat of the moment.
I was the greatest stepdad and dad around. Did exactly what any person would do, but he just saved my family. So
Everyone would do it. There's no doubt in your mind. Everyone would have done the same thing.
A clothes dryer and a wood-fuelled heater are being investigated as the possible cause. Gary Blair, NBN News.
First, it was coaches to undergo a safety overhaul. Now school buses may get the same treatment, something the P&C Association has been working towards for over a decade.
Parents are very concerned that buses are travelling at relatively high speeds. 80 kilometres is quite a high speed, with no seatbelts in there for children.
With many country school bus routes taking in major highways like the Pacific and New England, some say the installation of seatbelts can't come quick enough.
Prevention is better than cure, and I think for the safety of our children that it would be a good initiative.
I saw a video in America of a school bus with all the kids bouncing around the bus. I think seatbelts are very important on buses.
And the wheels are in motion, but the journey's taking longer than expected. In a letter from Carl Scully's office to Mr Turner last month, a representative for the Roads Minister said a draft options paper will be released for consideration by the end of June. But a spokesperson for Transport Minister Michael Costa says that report is nowhere near complete and claims the findings won't be made public until later this year.
I think it's time it should be reported and opened up so that the people can see what's in the report and some valued consideration can be given to what recommendations are in there.
Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
Behind this gate are 8 slightly inexperienced but nonetheless willing and able guide dogs looking forward to taking some first-time students for a test run. Don't let the sad puppy eyes fool you. These pooches are raring to go.
All the people here today have canes, so it's a big step from having an innate object to an animal, and they're going to learn how to care for the animal, groom, look after it.
Having a guide dog is a huge responsibility. Owners are obliged to keep the animal clean, healthy and vaccinated, but in exchange they get a companion for life.
Oh, it's more than a friendship. The bond between a handler and their dog is a very special thing, and it's perhaps difficult to describe, but it's very, very close.
Trying it firsthand, blindfolded and relying on the dog's eyes really brings home the huge trust placed in the animal. Allowing a dog to lead you across roads and through a crowded mall without any idea of your surrounds is daunting. And with dog leading, you turn to your other senses to get your bearings. But amazingly, the dogs know all the right places to go. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
SES units across the Hunter region have responded to 83 calls for help since the storm rolled in yesterday morning. While most severe damage in the state was suffered further south, there was one unlucky homeowner in Macquarie Hills. There was nobody in the Alhambra Crescent house when a tree from the neighbour's yard was ripped from the ground and blown onto the roof.
This is what we call a horror job, this one. It's caused a fair bit of damage to the residents, and we're having to take it down piece by piece.
Poor access prevented a crane from being used, forcing the SES and tree loppers to spend 8 hours chipping the tree off the house. Meantime, boats which had been stranded on the shore of Lake Macquarie yesterday returned to the turbulent waters. In total, about a dozen vessels were dragged from their moorings by winds reaching 90 kilometres per hour. However, the storm did little more than whet the appetite of hopeful farmers. Less than 3 millimetres of rain fell across the Upper Hunter yesterday and last night. The rainfall clung to the coast, Nelson Bay, the envy of the region, recording 73 millimetres. Todd Nardi, NBN News.
Weather-wise, it was probably the best day to start a debate that's sure to generate plenty of heat. Giving Newcastle Rotarians a look forward at the job facing the current council, the Lord Mayor says it's time to start talking about the cost of parking in Newcastle so the city can pay for future needs.
This is not about raising revenue, it's about finding a means of funding a new parking station, and we can do that without a large increase, but you can't do it with no increase.
When it comes to improving council's income, the Lord Mayor's talking rubbish and recycling, with Summerhill Dump the focus for regional waste management.
So we have the opportunity, by working with Lake Macquarie Council, Cessnock Council and Maitland Council, to be able to recycle waste to another degree, to another level.
And the Lord Mayor has another major recycling project in mind. He wants the Newcastle Regional Museum to stay at Newcastle West and the $3.5 million BHP gave the city when steelmaking ended to be spent on refurbishment of the site.
I think the time has come to make a decision. As we approach making that decision, at this stage I'm unconvinced that we need to shift it.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
Steve Simpson didn't feel much like talking today, and who could blame him after this head clash with Petro Civoniceva late in the game yesterday, which left him with a broken jaw. It was Simpson's first game back since breaking a bone in his foot in March, and with surgery tomorrow, it'll be his last this season, unless Newcastle can reach the semi-finals. The Knights have 7 rounds to do that, and believe it's more than enough.
Just need a bit of momentum.
It would have been nice to have started that rolling yesterday against Brisbane, but Newcastle just couldn't take a trick. The one which hurt the most came only minutes later when Michael Ennis thought he'd secured a match winner. There was just a brush of skin in it. Disappointed yesterday, he was still trying to work out what happened today.
As much as I can dwell on it and think about it 100 times over my head, it can't change anything.
2 points out of the top 8, everyone's focus is now on the Cowboys and the remaining 7 rounds.
But we definitely don't think we're out of it, and we're very confident that we can still finish, 6th or 7th, let alone 8th.
It's not the end of the world if we, yesterday's result, but we need to win against North Queensland this week.
Enough said. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
If you're a father, then bonding with your baby simply by singing, holding or talking to them more often could make a big difference in the way they grow up. In essence, researchers believe an engaging father means a well-adjusted child.
And when you see those with involved fathers, you can see they do better on those measures of they do better at school, they do better cognitively, they have better social relations with their peers. Those sorts of things are the things that fathers can contribute to.
Richard Fletcher from the University of Newcastle has just completed a report looking at the current research into fatherhood in Australia. He says there's an urgent need for an Australian study into the early intervention of fathers in children's lives. That's something Mr Fletcher hopes the University of Newcastle will take on.
We don't really know enough about helping fathers, how to be involved and how to be good dads in that early period.
He says US and UK research shows fathers shouldn't wait for their children to be able to walk and talk before becoming involved.
I think that's pretty common that dads think, well, once they can kick a ball or something, then we'll get together and I'll really have a role. But I think the research about how babies develop is pretty clear that fathers have a role from birth.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. We have the York Building, the Boardwalk and the Spark Helmore Building, all glowing examples of contemporary Australian architecture.
Well, the architecture in Newcastle is evolving at the moment, and we've got some excellent examples being built at the moment.
But we all have different tastes, and not everyone is so enthusiastic about Newcastle's latest architectural creations, in particular the Crown Plaza on the foreshore.
It's a monstrosity.
I think it's awful. I think it's disgusting. It looks like a little prison to me.
Even the Spark Helmore Building is getting its share of criticism.
It doesn't really fit in.
In an effort to bridge the gap between architects' creative minds and public taste, the nation's most prominent award-winning architects are being flown to Newcastle to present lectures to the public and architecture students.
It's very important for the public to understand the approach that the architect has taken to these spaces so that they can really understand why things are done a certain way.
The first of the 5 lecture series starts tonight at Customs House. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Police believe this Dora Street property was being used as a drug house. Waratah detectives raided the premises after what has been described as collaborative police work.
Worked on intelligence received from other police in the field and executed a search warrant at a premises in Dora Street, Mayfield yesterday morning.
The number of people police allege they discovered inside the home required both Waratah and Newcastle stations to handle the arrests. A 52-year-old Mayfield man was charged with allowing the premises to be used as a drug house. 13 other people were charged following the alleged seizure of amphetamines, used syringes and other drug paraphernalia.
And offences range from possession of prohibited drugs right through to offences relating to being on premises, used for drug house.
And the 13 charged with drug offences must now stay clear of the area.
But they have conditional bail not to go back near those premises.
Waratah police say the result sends a message to the community that illegal drug activity won't be tolerated, and this is just the start of their crackdown. Gary Blair, NBN News. Timetable changes will now see the final Sydney train leave Newcastle at 9:20 p.m. Monday to Fridays, 2 hours earlier than at present. However, City Rail says late-night commuters will still have an 11:20 p.m. train that will operate as far south as Gosford. No services have been cut on the Hunter Valley line, but all rail commuters have been advised to check for timing changes.
It was their day off, but that didn't make a difference. In February last year, police officers Brad Jones and Troy Andrews chased down a man through Islington who they'd seen stabbed to death, 36-year-old Rocky Hodson.
We were at a store in Islington. An altercation happened between two males. One male then produced a knife and stabbing another male. We've then engaged in a foot pursuit.
After a violent struggle, they disarmed the attacker, Terence Price, who was later convicted of manslaughter. Today they were recognised for their dedication to the job and bravery with a Commissioner's Commendation Award.
It's a great honour. I guess that'd be the best sort of medal that I'll ever receive in my service.
And they joined dozens of other officers acknowledged for their service to the community at the Waratah Local Area Command Presentation Day. Meanwhile, the shortage of police in Port Stephens should be fixed by August with the addition of Police Academy graduates, but the creation of a Port Stephens Local Area Command is still uncertain.
At this point in time, it can't be seriously considered, but it's not out of the question later on down the track.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
The welcome surprise came late yesterday, baby Jackson Davis making his mark on the world in more ways than one.
I really didn't care at that stage what number he was.
Jackson is the sixth child of Abermain couple Deborah and Craig Davis and the John Hunters' 50,000th baby. And we all know what that means, hundreds of thousands of dirty nappies, bottles, sleepless nights, but also millions of smiles.
I just want something special for Deb. She's been through the mills lately, so just want something good for her.
The Division of Obstetrics and Gynecology at the hospital has seen many changes since the first baby was delivered in January 1991. The number of caesarean sections has almost doubled, while the role of midwives has increased, taking the strain off gynecologists. And along with those changes comes a wealth of stories.
The lady who delivered her baby at the front door of delivery suite, and the midwife fortunately caught the baby.
Colleen West, NBN News.
Hunter Valley Company Advanced Technology Systems manufactures remote subs for the Royal Australian Navy and is a success story born with the help of a business enterprise centre. The centres offer advice and nurturing in the early stages of a business's life. But the government is reducing money for BECs so that only 18 centres will be funded by the state instead of the current 50.
To lose an $80,000 funding contract is a fairly significant chunk out of your annual money.
This centre at Kurri Kurri will survive because it draws in money from a range of government and private sources, but it's feared smaller offices in regional areas will fold.
Small business centres where there's populations of 15 or 20,000 people and they rely on maybe their local government and the state government funding, then they'll struggle.
12 so-called super centres will be funded, spread throughout the state.
It would have been a match made in heaven, a high-energy steelworks built within a stone's throw of Bayswater Power Station. But Boulder Steel will establish its latest big-budget plant in Brisbane's southwestern suburbs, leaving the Muswellbrook Shire executive exhausted after 4 years of lobbying.
Department of State and Regional Development was also very much involved with this project.
Did they do enough?
Well, if you lose a project, then I'd believe that you have not done enough.
But the Minister for Hunter, Michael Costa, says New South Wales won't get into a bidding war with Queensland, claiming the government's hands are tied.
Projects have got to stack up on a commercial basis. If they don't stack up on a commercial basis, there's nothing the government can do to make those projects viable.
Companies have got to get together their equity capital. We can't raise their equity for them.
Behind the politics of it all are the job seekers, and while not as big, the council has just approved the construction of a fly ash plant within the Bayswater buffer, which should provide up to 40 jobs. Adam McKilrick, NBN News.
A new wheelchair and 24-hour care and necessities Ernest Very says he can't afford.
If I would have won, then I could have started a much better life, a much healthier life, a more fulfilling life.
The 45-year-old quadriplegic successfully sued Wyong Shire Council after diving off a rock platform at Soldiers Beach on January the 24th, 1993. The council was ordered to pay $5 million in damages. However, the New South Wales Court of Appeal has overturned that decision, saying the risks of diving from the platform should have been obvious despite a lack of signage.
I walked over there. I stood there and watched for a while. People weren't getting injured. So to me, that said to me that there was no obvious risks.
And it flags to this state government up and down the coast of New South Wales that the potential exists for further these cases, as was outlined in this court case.
Mr Very has been ordered to pay almost $1 million in court costs, but how he'll do that remains to be seen. Meanwhile, an Irish backpacker who became a quadriplegic after diving into a creek at Coffs Harbour in January 1999 has been denied a second chance to sue the local council over the incident. The Court of Appeal has ruled against an application from 33-year-old Gary Mulligan, saying he was aware the water depth was variable and therefore knew diving was a risk.